All right, we are ready to start. I'm so excited to be here. I was all excited last year to come and teach, and then COVID happened and all that sad stuff. And so I'm so glad we're having in-person conferences again. Isn't that exciting, you guys? Yay! All right, I'm just going to dive into the building blocks of romance because I know that's why you're here. And I kind of don't know how long this presentation is going to be, so I may kind of go a little fast because I cram-packed as much as I could in it. But here is my little pyramid of building blocks of romance. So this is kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. First, you have the meet cute, then the chemistry, and the repelling, and the adhesive, and I'll talk more about what those mean. Then you have the inner conflict, the emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, dark moment, climax, and resolution. And feel free to take pictures of this if you want. But we'll go through each one of these step by step, and I'll explain what they mean and how to put them into your story. So before I go into the building blocks of romance, I'm just going to go over what is a romance novel, because when I first started writing, and I thought I was writing kind of a romance novel, it had some suspense, but it also had some romance in it. I thought, I know what a romance novel is. And so I wrote about my two characters meeting, and they liked each other right away, and they had a few dates, and they went ice skating together, and it was all so romantic and fun. And then I realized I didn't really write a romance novel. What I wrote was super boring because there was absolutely no conflict. So let's talk about what is a romance novel. So a happy couple is a boring couple. Everybody knows in Writing 101, it's the conflict that pushes your story forward. So you need to have some kind of conflict between your couple, a reason they can't be together. Your romance novel is also not a story about a ranch in trouble, a wedding, or a family reunion. Those are the backdrops that you are putting behind your romance novel. If you can take that thread of romance and pull it out of your story, and you still have this awesome, exciting story about a ranch in trouble, then you probably haven't written a romance novel. If you pull the romance out and the whole story falls apart, then you know you've written a romance novel. So it's really not about those things. Those things are probably in your novel, but they are meant to be tools for bringing your characters either together or tearing them apart. So what a romance novel is, it's a story about two people falling in love despite the obstacles in the way. So there's something happening in your book that they have to overcome, right? That's why we read romance novels. We want to, as we're reading, we want to have this, oh my goodness, I can't see how these two people are going to be happy at the end. I don't understand how they're going to get together. I don't know if anybody here watches Korean dramas, but did anybody watch Crash Landing on You? Yes. In the middle of that, did you go, how in the world are you going to bring these two people together? That's what you want in your book. You want this, how in the world are they going to do this? So step number one is the meet cute. And despite the name, with the cute in the word, it doesn't have to be a cutesy meet cute. That just means you're introducing your two characters to each other in some way. The meet cute does need to be soon in your book. I say within the first or second chapter. But if you're writing like an 80 or 90,000 word romance novel, it can be third or fourth chapter. It doesn't have to be within those first two chapters. I kind of write shorter, more like 50,000 words. So I want the romance to get going right away. So it really kind of depends on your word count and how much backstory you're putting in the beginning. You also want your meet cute to be engaging. You don't want it to be boring, right? So you want something interesting to be happening when your characters first meet. You also want to include some kind of promise in there. So you're implying future tension between your two main characters. So if you think of Darcy and Elizabeth when they first met, the tension and conflict that implied gives you a promise as a reader that these things are going to develop over time between these two people. And you're going to get to see a lot of sparks fly between these people. All right. If your characters already know each other, that is completely fine. You don't need some brand new introduction between your two characters if they're best friends, right? But you do need something to happen within the first couple of chapters that changes their relationship in some way. So let's say you're doing a best friends to lovers romance, and within the first couple of chapters, one of them needs to pretend that they have a boyfriend, and so they ask their best friend, will you come to my parents' house and pretend you're my boyfriend? So that changes their relationship in some way, and that's the inciting incident that starts off the romance. All right, step number 2 is chemistry. And that is all the bubbly feelings that your characters get when they see each other or when they are near each other. Your chemistry is that first little exciting sizzle that happens between the characters. They need to think the other one is attractive. Even if you're writing kind of a Beauty and the Beast romance where one of them maybe isn't physically attractive, there has to be some little thing that is still attractive to your character, right? Most of the time when you're writing romance, the other person is physically attractive. And in the beginning, it is pretty much all physical because I don't know the other person very well unless you're doing the best friends thing. But most of the time, they don't know each other, so the attraction is going to be purely physical. You're going to do the sweaty palms or the racing heart or stuff like that. You want to make sure, though, that you're not overstating it. You don't want it to be like, you don't want to hit the reader over the head with, they are attracted and they have all these things going on in their body when they get close to each other, you know. You want to start that out pretty subtly and small and have it grow over time. And the last thing is romances are all about emotion, especially sweet romances. So the chemistry is going to be created through those emotions between those two characters. All right, I'm not going to talk a lot about subtext, but you can create amazing chemistry through subtext. It's when your characters don't say out loud what they are thinking, but you can tell what they're thinking through their body language or through the words they are saying that are implying something else. So I think of subtext as flirting. And if you're like, oh, subtext, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean? Don't get depressed because I had written 2 complete novels before anyone ever said the word subtext to me. And they said, that's okay, you have subtext in there. So even though I didn't know it, I didn't know the word or had it defined to me, I was still putting it in my novel. So what I would say is if you want to study subtext, just do a little Google search and read about what it is. My favorite example of subtext I put in my How to Write a Swoon-Worthy Sweet Romance Novel book, and that is a scene from Sabrina with Harrison Ford and the girl I can never remember her name. Yes. So they're walking down the street and they're talking about Paris because she loves Paris, and he says, is there anything about Paris you don't like? And she said something like, well, everything is expensive. And he says, well, if I'm going to go to Paris, I need to know how to say, I'm just looking, instead of, I don't want to buy this. And so she tells him how to say it in French. And then he says, how do I say, I know what I want? And she says that in French. And then he turns and looks at her. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably totally messing this scene up, but he turns and looks at her. And then, so they're staring at each other. And he says, how do I say I'm looking at what I want? And she gets like kind of flustered, like, oh my, he's got lots of subtext in that. And she says, I forget. And then she kind of breaks eye contact, and that's the end of that. But that's great subtext. So if you want to know more about subtext, just kind of pay attention to the TV shows you watch, the rom-coms that you're watching. Pay attention to the scenes where something's going on underneath the surface, right? And you know they're fighting about something, but that's not really, they're not angry about the Coke machine. They're really angry about something else. Maybe it's the sexual tension they're angry about, but they're using that as a way to show that underlying thing. All right, repelling. And what I mean by repelling is you need something that tears your characters apart, some reason they can't be together. So I just kind of use the word repelling as an overarching thing. So what is repelling the two people in While You Were Sleeping? Well, he thinks she's engaged to his brother nonetheless, right? So that's a great repelling thing because he's not going to make the moves on the girl that he thinks is engaged to his brother, especially while he's like in a coma, right? Who does that? That's like really rude. So that's a great thing to keep them apart. And what's keeping them apart, and you've got mail, is he put her out of business and she kind of hates the guy now. So that's a fantastic way to separate those guys. Beauty and the Beast, he's a beast. Kind of mean and nasty, so she doesn't like him. All right, so you need a good reason why your characters cannot be together. And what I like to do is I like to look through all my tropes and search the trope list and find tropes that repel the two characters. So let's say he's her best friend and he's really afraid of messing up that friendship. So that's the friends to lovers trope. Or he's famous, she's not. She lives in a small town, he lives in LA or something, and they can't be together because he's some celebrity and she doesn't live that life. Or he used to date her friend and she doesn't want to mess that friendship up. So that's the best friends lover trope. And how about their relationship is not real, it's a fake relationship. So they can't really be together because even though we're kissing and pretending we like each other, it's all fake. So that's a good one to repel the characters. Or they hate each other. That's the enemies to lovers trope. So you also want to look at layering your reasons why they can't be together. Because if you just choose one thing that separates your two characters, a lot of times as you go throughout your book, your characters are becoming closer together. They're overcoming some of these obstacles. And if you only have one thing, and then halfway through the book, you realize that one thing has already been overcome. And now there's no reason why they can't be together. And your tension falls apart, right? So I like to layer my reasons. So let's make up a fake romance. Reason number one she can't be with him is she's got trust issues that stem back to childhood. Maybe dad left when she was a kid, so she's got trust issues. Second reason, she can't move because her mother is sick. Third reason, he's a famous rock star and he lives somewhere big city and she lives in a small town and he can't move to be with her and she can't move because her mother is sick to be with him. And the fourth reason, he's rich and obnoxious. So she doesn't like him. All right, so which one of these is going to be overcome first? If I were writing this, and you can write different things, so you can do different ways, but if I were writing this, I would have the rich and obnoxious be the first thing that they overcome. Because maybe that's just a persona that she's seen, some YouTube video somewhere she saw and she misunderstood it. And as she gets to know him, she gets to know that he's really a really kind and nice guy. So that one will overcome when the first, quarter or third of the book. And then you have these other reasons to fall back on why they can't be together, right? So that's why I like to layer my reasons. All right, put in all these reasons why they can't be together and you've successfully torn them apart. One thing I've seen when I'm workshopping a book with somebody is they tell me, okay, these are all the reasons they can't be together. But then I read chapters 1, 2, and 3, and the minute they meet, she gets all Twitter-pated and giggly, and she flirts with him because he's handsome, and they totally forget to act the way that they've set up. He's rich and obnoxious. You're not acting like he's rich and obnoxious. You're acting like he's handsome, which he is, and you're flirting with him. So you have to make sure that your characters act appropriately. If you've set up all these reasons why they can't be together, then make sure they are acting that way. But they can't stay apart the entire book. So what else do you need? You need something that shoves them together, and that's what I call the adhesion or adhesive, something sticky to put them in the same place at the same time. All right, so what's keeping these two characters, Paul and, oh, that's his real name. I forget their fake names. But it's Christmas time, and she said she's part of this family. She said she's engaged to the son, and so the family is bringing her in, making her come over for Christmas and inviting her to things, and that's what puts them in the same place at the same time. All right, and you've got mail. They've been chatting online, and they've kind of fallen for each other through these messages through chat. And so that's what's pulling them together, is he really likes her. Even after he finds out who she is, he really likes her. And so that's what's pulling them together, is the chat online. And Beauty and the Beast, well, she's held captive in his castle, so they are forced together. All right, so I look at tropes when I'm trying to figure out what I can do to shove them together, because my trusty tropes help me. Either they work together, which is the boss-employee trope, or they get married, which is the marriage of convenience trope, or there's someone else shoving them together, like a matchmaker. That works really well if your characters hate each other, but they keep finding themselves in the same place, miraculously. Or he's her nanny, the child carrot giver trope, or one of them is in love with the other one, unrequited love trope. So let's go back to the fake one we started building, where he's a rock star and her mom is sick. So what can we layer in to pull these two characters together? Let's say his mother lives next door to her mother. So here they are in the same proximity. And it's Christmas time, so he's home with his mom. And he needs a fake girlfriend to get his mom off his back, because she keeps bugging him. When are you going to bring him a girlfriend? And he's had a crush on her. So you layer all these things in that will pull them together. So if you've created this dynamic where a lot of reasons why they can't be together, and then a lot of reasons why they are shoved together, then you've created this wonderful dynamic of you have this step forward, step backwards romance going on. One tip I would say is try to avoid insta-love. Now, the minute anybody says, do not do this, someone's going to write a fantastic book that does this and proves you wrong, right? So I'm sure there are some fantastic books out there that are insta-love, and authors make them work. But I would say 90% of the time, if you are, especially if you're a new writer, if you're writing and there's a problem happening in your book, sometimes it's insta-love, and you just haven't built up enough of that background between the two of them for the readers to believe that your characters are emotionally invested in each other. I will say one of my massive pet peeves is when your characters see each other for the first time. Maybe they have a meet and cute, or they even look at each other across the room at a party. And then for the next 2 chapters, one of them is just thinking about the other one. And they're not actually physically together, but you're like, well, I have to advance the romance somehow. So my character's going to think about him and how handsome he was. And that's a massive pet peeve of mine, because I see handsome people all the time, but I don't go home and think about, oh, that guy I saw at the grocery store was really cute. I wonder what he does. So try to avoid that. Actually get them physically together. That's where the magic happens. All right, the volume of attraction. You want to start your volume of attraction low and work your way up as the story progresses. So if they see each other and there's lots of sparks and lots of interest, then you have a harder time showing this growth between your two characters, because you've already set the bar really high at the very beginning, and then there's nowhere to go. So I always try to make sure my attraction is low in the beginning, and at the midpoint it can be kind of at a 5, and at the end is where you've got your high emotions. All right, inner conflict is the next building block. Your inner conflict obviously starts small, because your characters aren't in love at the beginning. So throughout your novel, your characters will start to struggle as they get to know each other, as they start to have feelings for each other, but you've created this reason why they can't be together. So in our In our little fake scenario, she's got her sick mom and she can't move to wherever this rock star lives. And so as she starts to fall for him and starts to get to know him better, she's going to have this inner conflict of, I really can't like this guy, but I really like this guy, but I can't like this guy because he lives a totally different life than me. So that inner conflict is going to grow. And at the very end of your book, right at the dark moment, that is where your inner conflict is going to be massive. This is where your character is going to be in despair because they can't have what they desperately want. All right, emotional intimacy is the next block. There are many things you can put in your novel that grow the emotional connection. These are just a few of them that I listed out. But as your character does something kind for the other character, as they show respect, as they show vulnerability, as they open up and say, you know, I'm actually afraid of the dark because that's stupid. And they show vulnerability to the other person, showing weakness, caring. They do something caring for the other person, even laughing together or comforting them, protecting, helping, flirting, offering an olive branch. That's a perfect one for enemies to lovers. Sharing, humility, getting personal. All of these things you can put in your novel to show that they are growing that emotional connection between the two of them. So of course you want to start that at a low volume and increase over time. So at the beginning they're kind of getting to know each other. The things they talk about are going to maybe be surface things, things that you might talk about on a first date. So one thing I do if I'm like, or what are my characters going to talk about, is if you Google what to ask a first date, you can get all these websites that have like 101 things to ask your first date. And it's a great way to like pick through and say, I want them to talk about this or that. And have them hold back at first. So show your character being interested in why did you do this? And have your character say, you know, I'm not going to tell you. That can be a way to show that when they finally do confess what their hang-up is or whatever it is, it will show the growth between the two characters, that they're coming together and becoming more intimate with each other. Near the end, they should be quite vulnerable with each other and they should be sharing the intimate details of their life. They should be sharing that emotional wound that happened to them as a child or whatever that has shaped them as a human being. I like to explore emotions when I'm exploring emotional connections. What does your character fear the most? When have they been in the most despair? When have they felt the worst anguish? What has been their biggest disappointment or their biggest embarrassment? And then they can explore these things with the other person and open up and share. So you want to create the perfect turmoil. You want to show these small acts of kindness, overcoming differences, characters softening toward each other, the flirting, the longing, the growing close. But you also have your character feeling conflicted. They remember why it won't work. They pull back so they don't get hurt. They stop themselves from falling in love. They're feeling this inner angst. And at the end, they're in despair because this isn't going to work between the two of them. So I have my dancers in the background, and that's exactly what your romance is. You want 2 steps forward, 1 step back, another 2 steps forward, and another step back. Physical intimacy. Even in a sweet or clean romance, we will have physical intimacy. These are things like standing close, patting a knee, fingers brushing, hand on the back, touching the neck, cupping the face, kissing. All of these things are creating that physical intimacy. When you combine physical intimacy with emotional intimacy, that can create an even more powerful scene. So your sizzle of attraction, you want to combine internal thoughts, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, emotional response, and the angst. All of those combined together can create that wonderful sizzle. And don't forget the power of pulling back or holding back, Because if your character is holding back emotionally, when they finally come forward and let themselves love the other person, that creates a much bigger payout for your reader. So let them hold back emotionally. Let them remember, oh, I can't love this person because of A, B, and C. Have them pull back physically. And the almost kiss can almost be more powerful than the kiss itself. So remember that pulling back is super powerful. All right, this is not one of my building blocks, but I want to talk just a second about magnificent kisses because that's why we read books. So the build up to a kiss is everything. Don't feel like, oh, I'm really nervous to write this kiss, and so I'm just going to get it over with fast, right? You want the slow build up to the kiss because we all want that fantastic moment when they finally kiss. But if you rush it and just be like, okay, and they kissed in the end, then we're going to feel like we were cheated. So slowly building toward the kiss over the span of the first half is usually how I do it. Now, Elena said first quarter, I think, is sometimes she has her first kiss in the 25 mark. That's fine. However you want to do it. I would just say, make sure you're doing the build-up between your characters and then have that first kiss. Grow their desire with stair-stepped physical intimacy. So your kiss probably isn't going to be the first time they touch. They're probably going to have a little knee touch or hand touch or fingers brushing or things like that before they get to the kiss. And then allow your subtext to build. All right, during the kiss, think about what is your character physically doing? How does your character feel? What is your character thinking? And I like to flavor my kiss scenes with the personality of the person experiencing it. So if my character is super into music, their kiss might talk about harmonies and things like musical terms when they talk about their feelings and their emotions of this kiss. All right, darkest moment. Oh, we're running out of time. I'm going to hurry. Your dark moment, your characters should be feeling all is lost, deep despair, that they've blown it, that the happiness is gone, and they are in anguish. Your character needs to change during your dark moment. Now that's kind of a misleading statement because they need to change throughout your book, right? You need to have that character growth shown throughout the book. But the dark moment is when they realize that change has happened within them. So whatever is holding them back, they should overcome it completely during that dark moment. So character growth you need to show throughout the book. They sometimes have to give up something for love, and I have no idea why there's noodles by that, but maybe they have to give up noodles. I like noodles. That'd be sad. They're that's right. Their dark moment is where they get to realize they've changed, and it gets them ready to say yes to love. And then they need to make the choice to love, that choice above everything else. And then you have the climax, and this is where they make the confession of their love. Now, you don't want to rush the climax, so I want to tell you to make it last a little bit. Give them some anguish as they've decided, okay, I'm going to confess that I love this other person. They don't know how the other person's going to react. I mean, you as the author know, so you can be like, oh, they're gonna love you back, I swear. But let them be in anguish a little bit longer as they're trying to decide exactly how they're going to tell the other person. Keep their emotions high, and they're putting everything on the line here. So let them be vulnerable about it. And then the resolution, that's the very end. Epilogue, this is where you tie up all the loose ends, show your characters in their new happy place, and they get to showcase their growth by whatever they're doing at the very end. Whew, I did it in the time frame I had. Thank you so much for coming to my class. This is my email. Feel free to snap a photo of it. You can email me any questions you have. I love answering authors' emails. I will help you pinpoint troubles if you're having troubles in your books and you're not sure what's wrong. I'm happy to help you with that. Any questions? We have like 2 minutes. Yes, in the back. Yes, you. Good question. I sent them in. Did you guys have them? Yes. Oh, you don't have all of the slides? Oh, I can send them in. Anybody can email me if they want them, if they don't have them. But yeah, I can send them in again. Yes. You have a question? Sorry, here's the mic.
Oh, dialogue is where I struggle.
Oh, dialogue, yes.
For me personally, I like it when they get to know you scenes are better than when they info dump backstory, because then you get to know both of their backstories and the flirty and all that. But dialogue is really where I struggle. I want it to be flirty and witty and fun and cute. And so any advice on that?
So with the dialogue, I like to pay close attention to the movies and TV shows that I watch and really study their dialogue, because a lot of times if you're studying what your characters are saying on TV, they're not actually saying what you might hear in real life, right? We talk very differently than what characters talk like. So I study what people on the screen are talking like to try and get a better feel.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Yes. That's my biggest advice. Yes. Here comes the mic. Sorry.
Hi, I was one of those that was involved in, I think you do critique groups or
Yes.
that type of thing. And how important do you think that is, and how do people put those together? Because the one that you put together with us, it kind of fell through.
Sometimes they fall through, they fall apart. Finding the right critique group can be a little bit tricky because people's personalities sometimes don't mesh, or people's goals sometimes aren't exactly the same. And so it can kind of fall apart sometimes. I've been in lots of different critique groups, and some of them fell apart and some of them worked really, really well. So it's just a matter of keep trying, I would say. Put yourself out there. Feel free to say, does anybody want to start a critique group? I'm free Tuesday evenings or whatever, and just see if anybody wants to join in. It really helps to have everybody writing the same genre, I think. But I have been in a critique group where we are all writing different genres and it worked. So just kind of keep trying is what I would say. I do still get feedback from people. I would say critique groups aren't as important for me at my stage because I've written so many books that I kind of know the flow and I know most of the big things, but I still do get feedback from other authors. Yes, I think a couple right here.
So, except for the part that the physical intimacy in sweet romance kind of ends at kissing, is there anything structurally different writing a sweet romance versus steamy, other than we just increase the level of intimacy?
I think they're really similar. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot structurally different between the two.
So tropes, reader expectations, You're finding the same, just
I am.
how close.
Just
how quickly we close
and
the door.
The language that's used is a little bit different, but I think that's a great question.
Do you have any tips or tricks on what to do if you're writing the book and you're just kind of stuck in that middle and you're just at a loss and you want to bang your head against the wall and you don't know what to do?
Oh, I hate the muddy middle. I am a pantser and I get to there's always a certain word count that I get to and I'm like, oh, I hate these characters. I hate where they're going. I hate everything about this book. So at that point, usually what I'll do is I'll do a brainstorming session and I'll just write down any stupid thing that comes to my mind. A car blows up, and just any ideas of things that can happen to push this story further along. And usually during the brainstorming process, I'll come up with, hey, I actually know what needs to happen. The father that we all thought was dead is going to show up. And then, that sparks something else. And I'm like, hey, this story is moving again. So usually that's what I do.
When you're doing stories with mature adults, not like young readers, and you're going to keep them apart physically, to not show physical intimacy, is that part of what you build into your blocks that you were talking about?
And keeping them apart physically?
Yeah, like if you're not going to show sex, are you talking about do sweet romances still be like fade to black or closed door sex? Do you allude to that, or if they're sweet romances, how do you keep readers involved all the way through if they're only ever going to just hug or kiss?
So usually with sweet romance, it's more about their emotional connection than their physical connection. So keeping the reader interested in a sweet romance, you're building up that sexual tension. And there you can have closed door sex. It really kind of depends on what type of clean romance you're writing. If you're writing Christian, then no, not until they're married type of thing. And we are over. Are we out of time or is that what's left? We have 9 more minutes. Oh, good. I thought we ended at 3:45. Yay. Okay. So yeah. So with Christian, you don't want any implication of anybody sleeping together until they're married. With just sweet romance, sometimes you can imply it or do fade to black. There's a lot of different levels within sweet romance.
But if you're doing it straight, how do you keep them, like 2 30-year-olds, from, if they're growing in their intimacy, emotionally, how do you put barriers in place that they're not? Do you mean like, oh, he goes on a trip, or like, what do you do to keep
most of the time
the sexual tension going, but not have them actually do it? Do you know what I mean? Like, and not have their parents, not like their parents, you know what I mean? Or all these different other things. Like, how do you keep the reader hooked and engaged, I guess is my question.
Usually I'm writing about characters who they don't want to do that before marriage. And so that's just never really a big problem for them. Usually my characters aren't like dying for each other in that way. And a lot of times there's, again, that's something that's tearing them apart emotionally. So they're not ready to give all of themselves to the other person until the very end of the book anyway.
Okay.
So usually that's what I'm writing. Yes.
Switching to the advertising side of a romance, where do you find that the big push for you comes in? Is it in the Facebook ads, the Amazon, the groups? What would be your kind of top 2 for sweet romance marketing?
So I will be completely honest with you. Facebook kicked me off of their ads. How rude. I wrote a young adult series, and the first book in the series was called Don't Bet on Love. And Facebook thought I was trying to advertise gambling, I guess, because they kept shutting down my ads over and over and over again. And I kept calling them up, and I'm like, this is a book, you guys. So finally they banned me. So I like Facebook ads, but they don't like me. So right now I use AMS ads and I use BookBub ads. And then I think for the most part, my most effective advertising is making a book free for a day and buying up as many newsletter ads as I can, like eReader News Today and Robin Reads, and if you can get a BookBub featured deal, that's the best. So that's mostly what I rely on, is sales or a free day and trying to promote it that way. Any other questions? Yes. Great question. She asked, what would I do if I didn't write romance? I actually started writing a paranormal YA. It's an experiment. I just had this idea come to me, and it's one of those stories is like, write me, write me, write me, write me. And I'm trying to sleep, and I'm like, no. And it's like, write me, write me, write me. So, but there is romance in that one. So I'm just a hopeless romantic, I guess. But yeah, I would probably write something fun and super weird, probably. Yes.
Just a quick question. Do you have a strong opinion on using grief as a repellent? I've heard some writers feel that it's too much for clean romance to have one character getting over the loss of fiance or things like that. Do you have an opinion on that?
Okay, he's asking if I have an opinion on using grief as a repellent. I don't know that I've written one like that, but I have. Let's see. I think Emery Meyer did. She wrote one like that. I really don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just a choice of how dark and deep you want to get into that grief. Because usually sweet romance is a little bit lighter, but I don't think it has to be whitewashed and without emotion either. So I would say it would be fine as long as you don't dive so deep in it that you're depressing your reader. Awesome. All right. Oh, a question back there.
Is there a difference between sweet romance and young adult romance?
difference between sweet romance and young adult romance. So just really the age of your characters is going to be the major difference between the two, and your focus is going to be different. With young adult romance, your focus isn't, I want to find the man of my dreams, I want to live happily ever after with him. Your focus is going to be more, a little more, this sounds terrible and don't quote me on this, but more selfish, because your young adult people are more centered around themselves, right? And so the mindset and the focus of YA is different than adult. So that's probably going to be the main difference between the two. But your adults are going to be more focused on, I want to find that forever person that I want to make a connection with. And your teens are going to be like, he's hot. Yes.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about your writing process?
Yes. So she's, let's see, my writing process is kind of all over the place. I'm a pantster, and so I just sit down and write. I have tried to plot out my books. I've tried to come up with all these things before writing, and I just end up tossing it all out because my characters come out different than what I think they're going to be. You know, I can plan all these things, and she's going to be uptight and he's going to be loosey-goosey, but when I sit down and write it, she's the loosey-goosey one and he's the uptight one or whatever. So their characters just come out however they do when I start the writing process. So I've stopped doing a ton of pre-planning. Usually what I'll do is I will pick some tropes that I think will work well together, try to figure out a way to twist them up a little bit, make it different. And then I try, as I start to write, I try to find my voice of my character. And if I can find that character voice and have it speak to me, then I can really sink my teeth into who that person is. And I kind of discover them within the first 2 or 3 chapters. And then I start to build in all the things that are going to, all the obstacles and things that are going to be in the way of them. So yeah, I just kind of do that. And then when I get to the muddy middle, I brainstorm and try to figure out where I'm going. I always know where I'm going to end up, because a romance, you know, you always know the end of the romance. So that's kind of nice with a romance. If you're a pantster, it's not quite so detrimental, I guess, not knowing where you're going to end up, because they always end up together. All right, she's asking, where would a book fall if it's sweet on the side of sex? No sex, but there's language in it. And I would say anything you write is on a spectrum, right? So sweet romance is a spectrum, and you can get a little bit steamier, or you can get a little bit more smoky, yes. If you add in language, that's going to take it a little bit more away from what readers are expecting in a sweet romance. It just kind of depends on how to market you want to write. And if people want a McDonald's Big Mac, that's McDonald's, right? Oh, good. I didn't say a Burger King one. You can tell I eat there all the time. If people are expecting a Big Mac and you put chicken in it, then they may not like it. But if you make them a Big Mac, but then you're like, oh, I'm going to add just this little special thing on top, you know, they're getting what they're expecting, but you added in something a little extra for them. So it really kind of depends on what they're expecting and how far away from that you go. Some people don't care about language in sweet romance, and some people will. So you're going to turn some people off. But it's just a matter of what you feel is the story you want to tell. And if you are willing to lose a few readers because you really want that in there, then go ahead and do it. Or if you're like, you know what, I put it in, but now I'm rethinking it because my sales are slow, and I really actually would rather have money than have a character who has a foul mouth. So I'm going to change it. You know, it is totally okay to, you know, give the market what they want. So it's completely up to you. Yes.
How specific are you or deliberate are you about like emotional wounds and each character having an emotional wound and
and how deep that wound needs to be? Do you plan that out? Does it just come out as you write? And is it something that needs to be like really angsty, or can it be not as angsty?
That's a great question. My characters tell me their emotional wounds as I write. And sometimes it's not as bad as other times, you know? So it really kind of depends on the character and all of their facets that come together for me, and if that emotional wound is something really angsty or not. So I have all levels of that in my books. That's a great question. Oh, and we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for coming. You guys were awesome.